Let's cue that music and start that word chat.
All right, welcome everybody to a rather warm that word chat. It's warm in so many levels. Warm because we have our friend John Kelly here. John and I are both in Ohio, which is like very tropical right now, under the heat dome, as many of you are. Heather Saunders, our producer, has a furnace-related issue. Most of you maybe are worried about your air conditioning. She has a furnace-related issue at the moment, oddly, which you don't want to have in this heat. But she may have to like cut out suddenly. And I may faint suddenly because I came back from a trip. I've got COVID. Second time getting over it. Got the Paxlovid. But it's also very hot up in that word chat studios up here. Anyway, our guest today, as I said, John Kelly. John's been on the show maybe 4 or 5 times. He's kind of a regular now. He's done a couple of our Word of the Year episodes when he was running dictionary.com, and he has appeared on To Talk About Dictionary.com with Heather Bonikowski. And boy, it seems like there was one other time. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, he's here today, and he was here. Many of you know that he canceled at the last minute. Just to keep things simple, we found a different Kelly to fill in for him, and made a last minute change, and you were all very understanding, and now he's back, and that was related to your sudden emergency with your dog. So I think that's got to be the first question: is how's your dog doing?
He's hanging in there. Thanks so much for asking, Mark. I feel you. I've been up since 3 in the morning. It's a long story.
Goodness.
That did not stop me from already throwing out some etymological tidbits before we even started. Heather said the word furnace, and if you're not
furnace, yeah.
I sort of tipped my hand there. Sure, it's so hot. Furnace is fine. The word is melting. It's related to the word fornicate. So let's
which I don't believe. I think that must be false.
You can look it up. Latin root for oven. Kind of some connections to where salt business happened in ancient Rome and so on and so forth. So we're kicking off big. Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, yeah, and we've got a quiz that we're not sure. We have some technical things with the quiz too. I've been actually dealing with Zoom, help desk. Not something you want to do when you're sick, but we'll get to that later. Let's where should we start? So John and I had coffee a few weeks ago here in Columbus. He's got family in Bexley where that word chat studios are, but he didn't want to get together in Bexley for coffee. He said, let's go somewhere in Columbus. So we did that, and we had a great chat. And so everything we chatted about, I may just like forget to ask things because I already asked him. But we talked. Just throwing this out. Your dog, you told me, has been with you for like your entire career, pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. And his name has an etymological story too. I rescued him when I was in Minneapolis, and I named him Hugo after his breed, which is primarily miniature Schnauzer, Schnauzer being German for this. And we picked a Germanic word, Hugo, which I remember meaning kind of big-hearted. It's a
Oh,
lovely name. And
okay.
he has sat by me as I blogged about too many word origins in Minneapolis and its snow, Laguna Beach and its sand, Ireland for many years, all the rain and the green, and then the heat in Austin, Texas. I can't imagine what it's like there today. And then all roads led back to the city of Seven Hills here, Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. All right. So Hugo, that's good. Your you blog is mashed radish, and I asked you this a long time ago. What the heck, where the heck that came from? And I don't remember the story, and I think it probably wasn't all that interesting. But what
Well,
is mashed
I remember
radish?
you asked the question and I gave you a horrible answer. Um, I didn't answer the question.
Oh, okay.
Mashed radish, when I started the blog, gosh, in 2012, and I did it pretty religiously every Tuesday, and then every Tuesday and Friday, and then over time, I was actually able to do to use the blogging to network with all the luminaries in the lexical field. Ben Zimmer, who's guest emeritus on this show. It got me into my dictionary work, but I didn't want to do another punny name like that word chat because all of those things were kind of taken. Root words or another word for, or, we've already got away with words in San Diego, California, and that awesome show. So I went for mashed radish because, oh, this is so corny. Very corny. A word I don't think we know the origin of. Um, Etymology is like breaking down words. And when you break something down, it's mashing it. And radish is the Latin word for root. So radix means root, like a root vegetable. We get words like radical from it. So as a result of that, I chose a pink color that is now I changed that because it's inaccessible based on web standards. And it's a name that is completely unsearchable if you care about me in etymology. So I have twofold unsearchability. John Kelly, good luck finding me when you Google that name. And
Right.
good luck
Mark
finding
Allen,
etymology
same.
when you search mash radish. So it's an SEO failure all around.
Well, if you search, well, wait. If you search mashed radish, don't you come up with mashed radish? Your
Eventually,
site?
you get a
Eventually.
lot of you get a lot of recipes, Mark.
Well, Mark,
You get a lot of
okay.
recipes.
All right. Well, that's,
And
yeah.
I did, by the way, when I started that, I did make mashed radish to give it a taste test. And I gotta say, it's very good, but I think you can just roast the radishes with a little salt and pepper and olive oil and you're fine. So you don't need to mash
You don't need to mash them. All
them. Yeah,
right.
you
Well,
don't need
that's good to know. You should have a little link on your site. So what have you been tackling lately? And how do you actually, you don't just like do etymology out of the blue. You try to relate it to what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I do. It's interesting because yeah, get a little bit more serious here. I've been having a really hard time doing that. Um, I feel like with all that is going on, and everybody knows what I mean when I say all that is going on, it just feels unimportant to, blog about another word in the news because that word inevitably goes back to our president, and it's kind of exhausting only ever writing about that. And then you have this moment where you're like, well, we still need joy and fun, and we should still create. So why not? I heard on a podcast yesterday, I think it was a quote from a Palestinian poet. Don't we deserve frivolity too? And so then I kind of reconnect that and I go, oh, I can do this. But it just feels kind of hard to write and create some days. So I've backed off a little bit on the newsy word origins, and I might reconnect with the pun intended roots of the blog. It just kind of reveals how an etymological mind works. Like I'm looking out my window and I see the Cincinnati River and I see a bridge and I see, well, a river and trees and churches and road signs and rooftops and flags. And every one of those things to me is like, oh, where does that word come from? 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 So I keep a ton of notebooks where I write down random words. Then I have a notes app too. And eventually you kind of start thinking a little categorically, like, oh, the food groups, like fat and protein, or combinations like heaven and hell. And you just kind of want to start thinking thematically. So, there are moments in which I want to get back to that. And then there are moments where I can't help myself. I've been trying to do a little bit on Blue Sky, what I call intrusive etymology, which is like, sorry, this has nothing to do with anything, but I thought of the word nifty, or I read the word tomorrow, or I saw graffiti that said diesel on it. I got to know where it comes from. I call it intrusive etymology. And some of the newsy stuff still comes up, like obliterate. That came up with the Iran situation. And I think of obliterate in terms of obliterated, being wasted, being drunk, but the literate part of obliterate is related to letters, right? So it's like wiping out letters. And all of that is just a ceaseless kind of churn of thinking that will be sure to bore everybody around you. Because anyone who cares about etymology is going to tell you about it, whether they like it or not.
I had this actually thought doing a show that when we're going to talk about other stuff, but I thought, are we doing too much about etymology? Because does it really matter? And there's the whole, given the current state of the world, does it really matter? But also, does anybody care about it? I think people probably care about it in this room.
It's a great question, and it's one that always came up when I was running dictionary.com, which is people do care about etymology. Ask anyone about posh or shit, or pardon my French, my beloved mother-in-law's in the room, fuck, or golf. Those are not acronyms, but for whatever reason, we're obsessed with thinking that they are. And so, you're working on a dictionary and maybe you got a word of the day vertical, or you got all this blog posts you got to do, or these videos you need to do. It's interesting to most people in doses, but it doesn't really monetize. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So we all care about where words come from because we all have relationships to words. And I think that language is what makes us human. Right. And language is how we think, it's how we socialize. And so that sort of matrix, or that vista of where does that come from? Where does that come from? That's just my flavor of curiosity. Right. And I think that etymology is just an insight into why are things as they are. Now, we happen to have this language English, right, that has a lot of stories to it. So many words have so many stories. We don't know where the word dog comes from, but goodbye originally meant God be with you. 11 is one left over. Galaxy, like Heather's background, is from the Greek for milk. Coach comes from a town in Hungary. Orange, named the fruit before the color. I mean, what is going on here? How can you not be delighted? But, it just doesn't necessarily make money.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, let me let you know we have a question from the room, and I don't want to slip too far away from that because it's related. So then we get to look at Heather's galactic milky background.
Are you ready?
That's nice. That's
It's
nice.
fabulous. And
the,
it's also
the stars are furnaces of the elements, right?
See, look at this. Man, I am never going to be as on it as you are. And
I've been up since 3, put it that way.
Oh, Sam has a question for you, and I think they are ready to unmute and ask. Take it away, Sam.
Oh, hello. I was just curious because you mentioned you were talking, Mark, you said you weren't sure whether furnace or fornicate were connected. I was curious, John, what your favorite source for settling etymological debates is or source
Oh,
says.
that is a great example. I think the best way to solve an etymological debate is to say, we don't really know.
No, that's a
Origin
cop out.
unknown. The great Anatoly Lieberman, who I would say is probably one of the few actual living English etymologists. He's got this wonderful book called An Analytic Dictionary of the English Language. It's dense. You really kind of need to know your Germanic languages, but he tries to tackle words whose origins are actually unknown. So I usually try to see what he did first because he's an etymologist. The rest of us just write about etymology. My second answer is just multiple sources. Of course, Etym Online is a fantastic resource by Douglas Harper. It's free and it is very good. The OED, if you have access to it, I would especially make sure that you look for when it was last updated, because sometimes if it's like not updated since 1900, it might have some language that's a little bit hard to understand, or it might have some origins that are maybe a little bit out of date. Wiktionary can be good. I really like, and I only have a physical copy of it. You see all those heavy books down there. For some reason, everywhere I lived with Hugo, Mark, I lugged those frickin' etymology books with me. Barnhart's Etymological Dictionary is very good. I know that Etym Online pulls from it. I don't think there's a digital version. But an out-of-print version purchasable online. It's quite good. It's quite readable. So a lot of the etymology stuff is just having the humility to know that there may not be an answer because language is accidental, and then just cross-referencing a lot of resources, and then deferring to people who are smarter than you, which is one of the great delights. Like I think all the time, like Barnhart or Weekly or Skeet, these great etymologists of yore, how do they put these things together? Like how does one do that? Make an etymological dictionary. It just seems magical and Herculean. And so the more time you spend on all these sources, sometimes you pick up little tidbits or stories along the way. Sometimes you can cross-reference Sam and come to a conclusion. But at the end of the day, Etym Online and OED are pretty great. And then send an email to Anatoly Lieberman.
Do you have his email? Do you chat with Anatoly?
I don't. I should.
You should. You should. I got this book. It's actually unopened. I haven't gotten to this yet. 2024. Lieberman wrote Origin Uncertain. You know, so he's making money off etymology. He's figured out a way.
And he runs a long running blog newsletter on Oxford Dictionaries. You can subscribe to it. I really like his approach to etymology, probably just because it's how my mind works. There might be kind of a life cycle to being interested in etymology. For my part, I attribute my interest in etymology to Catholicism, divorce, and being from the Midwest. So
Okay.
Catholicism, you encounter words in school like undercroft and transubstantiation, and you're like 6 and you're supposed to know what the catechism is. There's still a lot of Latin, so I took Latin as a kid. Divorce, my parents divorced when I was young, and so I had a lot of time driving around in the car with my dad. My dad studied the classics, and he would drop little tidbits, but all that drive time before phones, just looking at road signs, looking at buildings around, and just asking that question, like, well, why is it that? And then Cincinnati, you're from a city who's got an interesting name, and as a kid, you go, what's going on there? Right. And that got me into etymology. And then you take Latin and then you're like, wow, ductile and productivity are related. And check out this word pulchritudinous. It means beautiful. And then you get into Proto-Indo-European and you're like, oh, I'm going to find the secret to the universe through all these weird looking roots. And then you're like, all right, that's cool. But like, what about a word like the? Or take the word take. I'm so fascinated by this. The word take, right? Take a break, take me with you, all of that. It's Old Norse. Old English had this word nim, nimian in the infinitive. It still survives in words like nimble, and I believe maybe numb. Somebody correct me on that real time though. How did it come to be that this basic word nim got displaced by take in our vocabulary? And it's due to, Viking conquests and integration, but I just think it's fascinating for those sorts of stories to happen. And English, like I said before, has a lot of them. And now, it's just kind of compulsive and intrusive. And as lives get busy, I blog about them when I can. I've been doing a little bit more on LinkedIn, just kind of doing words that are connected to work and things like that. I hope blogging comes back a little bit more too, because now there's so much pressure to do video content, and that's great, but folks, I'm not doing a John Kelly TikTok on these things. I just can't. And I'll leave it to those who can, so it's just, what's this going to be for? Lifelong curiosity.
Well, good. Well, good. And eventually a book, maybe you can, maybe another, take a cue from Anatoly and
just what the world needs, another book about etymologies. Although,
you know what, we keep getting them though, don't we?
We do. That's the thing. What I'm tinkering around with is more so, we have a lot of books about how dictionaries got made, but there aren't really a lot on how these etymological dictionaries get made and who are the people that did these things. Oh. And there are characters involved. And then I'm also interested in how etymology creeps up in popular life. So, let's say you're in grad school and you're reading Heidegger's Being and Time, and you're like, why are there 1,000 pages on etymology in this? To why is it so sticky that we think POSH is an acronym standing for port out, starboard home, when it's not? So there's a relationship to etymology that maybe some publisher would be interested in.
Well, one application of etymology is often to settle debates on usage, which kind of works, both ways because meanings change. Mm-hmm. So I wonder and there's a question at the end of this, but is there how do we handle the sort of the nurture versus nature question? Like, I mean, how much should usage be based on original meaning, and how much should it be based on something else?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you're getting at what is sometimes called the etymological fallacy, which is the original meaning of a word. The etymological meaning of a word is the correct meaning of a word. And so a classic example of this is literally versus figuratively. People will say, well, literally means this, therefore it can't figuratively mean that. The debate's decided. All you got to do is open your ears for 5 minutes in your day-to-day life, and people are using literally for emphasis. That's it, right? So etymology, what does it do for us? It can help us settle some usage debates, but you have to be very, very careful. It shows that language changes over time, right? That's kind of the anti-corollary of the usage one. So take a word like nice, right? Nice recorded late 1200s, French via Latin, from the Latin for not knowing, like science, niscience. It first meant foolish. So you go back in time, nice meant foolish. All right, and you fast forward to today, and it means fine or good or okay, right? everybody would look at me cross-eyed if I say, well, you're using nice wrong, right? So we also have to look at what words are we doing that to. So if we're not doing it to nice, if no one's disputing we're using nice wrong, but they are disputing literally or versus figuratively, usually means it's kind of just something that bothers them, right? Now, most of us don't care about etymology, but all of us care about our opinions on things, especially on correct versus incorrect usage. We can learn a lot of words in English thanks to etymology. 60% of our vocabulary, I think the stat is Latin and or Latin via French. And a lot of hard words or learned words, words in science and academics are often Latinate. So it can help you decode meanings, helps us understand history. We have a word like orange, I said before. It named the fruit before the color. I think the fruit name was, I don't know, 14 or 1500s, and the color name is a little bit after. How could that be? What do you mean we didn't have the word orange? And then you look at its origins and you go, Sanskrit, Narankas, what happened there? How is it Sanskrit? It's orange. But it tells a story of trade and colonialism and how a fruit gets passed through Portuguese, through all of the Arabic speaking Mediterranean into English. And all of a sudden, later than you might think, we have this word orange. So it's kind of a fun way into history. I think it's fun. But at the end of the day, for me, etymology reminds me that language is constantly changing.
Well, it does tell us history, it tells us about our origins. It occurs to me that if you're a French etymologist, it's always origin Latin.
You'll find
So
some
being
weird
in
things.
English,
You'll find some Gaulish and Frankish stuff happening in there.
sure.
Yeah.
And orange was a good example. You just mentioned some Arabic, a lot of Arabic, and
but it's mainly Latin. But you can still have fun, like how the verb avoir in French. I mean, that is an impossible evolution via Latin. Aujourd'hui, today. I mean, what happened there from the Latin word for today, which I believe is hodie? So you can still have some fun.
Speaking of fun, I always people's eyes glaze over when you mentioned Cincinnati, the origin of your town. I always tell people where that came from, and by the time I'm done telling them, I figure they really don't want to know. But I like telling it anyway. But what can you share with us the Cincinnati origin?
Oh, sure. This is a classic one. I'm looking at an old bridge, and there's a statue with a lot going on there. But Cincinnati, back in the day, Cincinnati's kind of an old town for being in the Midwest, late 1700s. There was an old fort here, Fort Washington. And there was a group of kind of early founding fatherish types, including George Washington, and they were part of something called the Society of Cincinnati. And they had a Latin name for it. And that of part in Latin for certain types of words, that of is in that I in Cincinnati. And so Cincinnati means of Cincinnatus, or in Latin, Cincinnatus. And he was the Roman ideal. He was a farmer by day and kind of a soldier dictator when crisis happened. And so he would put down his plow when duty called, and then he would pick up, while this is really hitting close to homes, he would pick up something that represented kind of Roman tribalism, which is sticks around an axe, which is called a fasces. And that fasces became the Italian word for bundle, which became fascism. But early on, this Cincinnatus was sort of I wouldn't say demigod, but probably a semi-mythical, maybe semi-historical. And again, audience, you're smarter than me. Correct me if I'm wrong here real time. But he was a model for what it meant to be a Republican, right? That if duty called, you would stop your farming and you would pick up your sword and you would rule. But then once the battle was over, you'd put down your sword and go back to tending your land. And so if you think about, say, early Jeffersonian democracy and kind of this vision for an agrarian America, I mean, it's just all shot through with that sort of thinking.
And George Washington is the example of the president who stepped down and went back to his farm.
Exactly. Oh, thank you. There you go. That's exactly it. So, Mark, you asked. Sorry, room.
Yeah, I didn't expect that long of an answer. That's great. Yeah, so it was actually named after the Cincinnati Society.
Well, fun fact
so
is
really,
the original. The fun fact is, in every Cincinnatian, or at least every Cincinnatian who I think is worth their salt, knows that the original name of Cincinnati was Lasantaville.
I know that, but
You
I'm
know
not
this?
at Cincinnati. Did not know that.
And this is where Catholicism, Latin schooling, having a lawyer dork as a dad, and driving around rat all comes together. But the name Lasantaville is a kind of learned creation. So you got the Ohio River, and then there's an important tributary into Kentucky called the Licking River. And some smarty pants, members of the Societas Cincinnati said, we're going to name this using a variety of important roots for the languages that we should care about. So the L was English, standing for the Licking River. The os is Greek, meaning mouth of a river. The anti is the Latin for across. And here we go. The ville is French for city. So Cincinnati is the city across from the mouth of the Licking River. That one you did not ask for.
I did not ask for that. I did not know that, but I'll add it to my repertoire. This is a good 15-minute bar discussion. People will be buying me drinks to stop talking. But let's, you know what? We've got a quiz, and for people in the room, I think we're maybe at a disadvantage because it's not working the way it's supposed to. So I don't know if we can get the room results, usually see how many people voted for which. We're not sure, but we'll try it. We'll run through it. We'll talk about it, and we'll have fun with it anyway. Heather, do you have our quiz ready to share?
Real quick, furnace check. Are we doing okay furnace wise? We good? Okay. That was called banter, Mark.
Yeah. Heather just messaged. Heather went dark and she messaged me. She was off dealing with something. So I hope it's okay now. All right. So Heather, do you want to read the questions or should I do the honors?
I'm happy to. So our first one, which hopefully everyone can see, the first one is sycophant. Is that what everyone sees?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. It comes from a Greek root literally meaning fig shower. And you can
not shower as I originally thought.
Shower. It's not a fig shower. You are showing your figs, not bathing amongst them. And you can pick true or false. And if you can scroll, we ask that you don't, to keep the fun intact on the honor system.
I think I just got the answer right.
No way. Oh my gosh. I'm intrigued to see.
I can't, maybe because I'm the host, but I can't even answer the question. I can only see it. Who knows what other people are seeing?
Are people able to answer? Oh no, I see.
No?
I was able to answer.
No.
Who was?
I was.
You can answer, John?
Well, then everybody else should be able to.
Looks like Karen can.
Okay.
Why don't we let
Heather?
Heather?
Well,
Heather, you want to troubleshoot it for a second, and Mark, we can talk maybe a little.
Oh no! There's a ticket in for this. There's no troubleshooting.
Yeah, there's
we're just gonna have to run with it. But we can talk about it, and we may find out the results from the room after the meeting when I get the results of the quiz. I'm not sure. There's supposed to be 3 little dots you press to say do it one at a time, and that doesn't work, and Zoom doesn't know how to help.
So you can't scroll and see the whole poll.
Yeah.
The whole as people are putting their answers in, but we will chat through them.
Right. So the first one sycophant, fig shower. I said no. That sounds, too silly to be true. Or shower, excuse me, not shower.
So it is true. It kind of seems made up, but a sycophant. Anyone in the room want to hazard a quick definition of sycophant?
I'm going to say fig shower.
So a sycophant is also kind of like a toady or a yes person. There you go. Absolutely. Yes, there, Amy. That's perfect. And it comes from Greek roots that mean fig shower. The sicko part is fig, and the fant part is show, and it's related to words like epiphany and things like that. But uh, we know that it comes from those roots, but exactly why is a little bit unclear. But we think that it referred to this gesture. It probably looked a little bit like a fig. You see this? So that's kind of like an up yours. And it historically represented the vulva. And the story goes that a sycophant was a person who would say yes in public, but, out of public would really be cutthroat, encourage people to be absolute edgelords to their opponents. So that's the theory on sycophant. Is
All right.
sycophant related to sybarite? I don't think so.
Dana asks in the chat. Sybarite, I think, is a place name.
That's one of those words that's one of those words I love, but I have to look up like every time I see it.
I'm seeing in Oxford. My first, I use the same. I use Edym Online, which is probably what I should have up right now, and OED for deeper dive. But my first, I've got the dictionary app on my Mac screen, and that gives me the up to date Oxford dictionary, and that tells me the origin is denoting an inhabitant of Sybaris, an ancient Greek city in southern Italy, noted for luxury.
Associated with luxury. And by the way, back to Sam's question, the native dictionary app, which is powered by the Oxford North American Dictionary, it's really good. And it has really nice everyday etymologies if you just kind of want to know where it came from and don't want to wade through like Middle French. So I use that one all the time.
Yeah, I've got it on my what do you call it, the little bar at the bottom, so I can immediately grab the dictionary rather than grabbing one of these many off the shelf, which is fun too. But
Mark, you added more questions here, and I might get a few of them wrong.
Oh, you know what? I've got not only those questions, but I've got. Have you seen League of the Lexicon? Are you familiar with this game?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's killer. It's and it's got lots of at least one of them I got from there. We did it. I think we did it on the show one time, and it was really tough trying to some of those questions. Anyway, yeah, we should move on. So I'm getting results that 63% say true and 38% say false. So I'm not sure if people are answering late or because it keeps changing still, but it is true. So number 2, Heather, what's number 2?
All right, number 2 is golf derives from gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. How do we feel about that? I'm seeing a strong false response in the poll.
Yeah.
And I'm really wanting John to say that is true.
It's not true at all. So you got a word like sycophant, and it has kind of an unlikely origin. And then you got golf, and for whatever reason, people just really want to believe that it is an acronym. I don't exactly know what it is about these acronyms. It does not stand for gentlemen only, ladies forbidden, as much as that can still feel true. It's Scottish by way of probably German, meaning club.
Club is a club you hit with?
Yep.
Or you're a member of.
The striking club.
Yeah.
I gotta know why we call clubs like membership clubs.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. All right.
This
Well,
this this is the curse, everybody. I don't get
oh,
any.
I know.
It's the endless rabbit hole.
While you looked it up, we have a 78% of people think that's false. Now it's up to 82% once you gave me the answer.
Good job, room. Good job, room. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
All right,
They're
next.
called folk etymologies or false etymologies.
Right.
The with in withhold means together, away, or nearby. And we had a pretty strong showing for away at 82%. The other two are tied at 9%.
Holy smokes! I'm really impressed. I thought this one was
Yeah.
going to be a little harder because if I go to the store with you,
Right.
I go with you. I go together with you. There's not a synonym for with, really, together, I guess, along with. But there's the original meaning of with, I just think this is so neat, was in some ways the opposite. It meant against or away. And then you can kind of see it if you squint really hard at it. It then became kind of near or kind of close to or towards, and it kind of morphed into together, alongside. But it survives in some words: withdraw, withstand, withhold. And I just love those little fossil elements that we have in English. But of course, the original word for with, and it wouldn't have caused confusion way back in the day because the native English for with was like the German for with, which is mid. I don't know. I just think that's kind of cool, right? How does that
Yeah.
happen?
And yeah, and Catherine points out in the chat that if you know your German, then that's becomes an obvious one. Now that one, I admit, that's one I would have gotten wrong. I did not know that.
No fair, Catherine. I don't know my German as much as I should for liking English etymology, because that's where the real stuff happens.
We have a question from Germany, so we'll get through the poll, but when we finish, remember we have a question from Germany sent in advance.
Okay. So next up is daisy. Comes from which of the following? Old English for day's eye. 62% of the room says yes to that. Daisia, the Latin name for the flower. Oh, went to 14%. All right. And then Old French for a choice morsel or pleasure. 21% had that vote.
Well, majority wins. Daisy is from the Old English, meaning day's eye, something like das Ega. So called because when the sun's up, it goes like this, and when the sun goes down, like this. And in fact, I remember learning that from the beginning of Anatoly Lieberman's first book, Etymology and How We Know Them. And it's just one of those little tidbits that it has a poetry about it. It's like window also means wind's eye, or you'll discover things like rival is from the Latin for like sharing a river. I love etymologies that have these beautiful metaphors in them. Escape means away from the cape. Squirrel, shadow tail from Greek. I'll never get tired of that one. Lord and lady were originally keeper of the loaf and maker of the loaf, and they kind of morphed. And there's some old school sexism in there, but galaxy before, the Milky Way galaxy, all that sort of stuff. And Daisy has that just picture perfect little metaphor hiding inside of it.
Nice. I added that third possible answer, and that's actually more the origin of dainty.
I was going to
Speaking
guess
of.
that. Yeah, I was going to guess that. That's good. That's good. That's good work, Mark.
Thank you.
Next one is which of the following words does not come from, you're going to have to correct my pronunciation on this, Nahuatl?
No, yeah, I usually go with Nahuatl. That
one.
TL actually has a sound that I cannot make. Like Nahuatl. That's a native Aztec language. So,
Yeah, we have it.
Mexico City.
Indigenous Central Mexican language, and the options are tomato. 36% said tomato, avocado, 7% of the room voted for that. Mocha with the resounding 57%, and chocolate at 0.
You all are too
Not
good.
chocolate.
I mean, you all are too good. Mocha is not from Nahuatl. Mocha is from a port in Yemen, where a lot of coffee was traded. So mocha coffee. There was that just kind of up the hill from that port was a great coffee growing region. That's kind of the origin of coffee too. And in the Middle Ages, if you were in the Mediterranean, the dominant economic force was in the Arabic speaking world, and so it passes in, and coffee comes into Europe, and we go from there. But what's cool is early on, a lot of that coffee probably would have been paired with chocolate. And you think about chocolate and you think about Europe. You think about tomatoes and you think about Italy. Avocados, yeah, you definitely think about Mexico. But a word like tomato, which just feels so Italian, is not. It's native to Mexico, and the Nahuatl word was like tomat. And you got colonialism, you got conquest, you got produce, and you got the transfer of vocabulary through the transfer of goods. You especially see this with cultural contact around food words. So anytime you're like, well, why do we have all these foreign words for foods? What else are you going to call them, right? So you see this with a lot of fruits and vegetables from all over the world. That's pretty cool.
Right. Okay. We should probably pick up the pace. We got like we have so many questions. I got so many questions.
You invited me to the show. You knew I was going to talk a lot.
Yeah.
That's your fault, not mine.
All right, number 6.
What language does swoosh come from? Old Norse, Japanese, Slavic, or Sanskrit? And we had 13% for Old Norse, 33% for Japanese, 47% for Slavic, and 7% for Sanskrit.
What was the percentage on Japanese?
33.
Most people, Slavic. No, most people said Slavic, 47.
Oh, well, it's actually Japanese.
Yeah.
Skosh comes from the Japanese koshi. And when when you're an English speaker and you see Japanese words, you kind of want to pronounce every vowel like sukoshi. But when you actually hear Japanese, there's a lot more elision happening. But Skoshi got smashed to Skosh, I think around the 50s. It's a military borrowing. I think it's when troops were stationed around the Korean War. And there's a lot of Japanese words in Korean and so on and so forth. But Skosh is Japanese.
Well,
that's pretty cool.
I love that one.
I do too.
All right. What did a Thames River tour guide once claim was an acronym, leading Mark Allen to stand up and say, "Sir, I demand you turn this boat around"? Thames, Wharf, Bay, or
part of this happened.
Part of this happened.
Part of this happened. Yeah, I did not actually stand up. I straightened up, looked at my wife, and shook my head. Say, no, that's ridiculous. It was. I was a little embarrassed, but everyone on the boat saw me say, no.
Gotta call out
from our own Mark Allen.
So and the answer is, I'll give you the answer. 38% said it's wharf. Maybe they've heard me tell that story before. Yes, the tour guide said wharf. Said pointed out some of the warehouses and said that's where the word wharf comes from. Warehouse at river's edge, or riverfront. Excuse me. Warehouse at riverfront, which again is one of those great examples of let's find an acronym when we have a perfectly good word.
When it's too cute, you don't trust it. Two things about wharf quickly. In Old English, it would have been pronounced more like wharf.
Right.
But here's a fun one. Later today, when you're just kind of do this. Instead of looking at your phone and doom scrolling, just say the word wharf over and over again out loud and get completely discombobulated. Wharf, 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 wharf. I mean, that's ridiculous. What a wonderful word.
All right. Number 8.
Number
Now,
8.
these are a couple I added. I figured we needed 10, so these
Yeah,
are to really quiz you.
I didn't cheat on the last one, so I might get a few of these wrong.
Okay. It is, which of these words is etymologically related to salt?
Oh, I know.
Salary, 73% said. Satiate, said 20%. And sweat, said 7%.
May I?
John, you know this one? Sure.
It is from the Latin word for salt, which is solace. I think it deals with, I forget. I know it deals with maybe some rationing for soldiers in ancient Rome.
Yeah, right. An allowance. You could purchase so much salt. You could get so much salt as a Roman soldier.
Kind of like,
Roman soldiers.
Like some old script. Yeah.
Yeah. Catherine in chat says she thinks people are paid in pillars of salt.
Oh,
So,
and would a pillar of salt be like one of those little conical things that you see?
What? I don't know. But number
Whatever it
9.
is.
Moving
I'm very
on.
excited about this one. Which of these is not formed from an acronym? Scuba, 0% said. News, 93% voted for. And LiDAR, 7% voted for.
John, you must know this one.
News is not an acronym. It does not stand for what? Northeast, west, and south,
Northeast.
whatever it is.
Right.
Oh, what are you gonna do? News is just new things, and new is related to Nova. So tell your poor spouse or significant other or your dog or whoever that supernova and news are related and see if they care.
Love that.
Scuba, I learned this reading the AP style book in high school. Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. And LiDAR is formed from radar, which is range.
Light
What is
detection
radar?
and ranging.
Ranging. Thank you. Yeah, LiDAR is light detection and ranging.
I think the style guides usually bring these up in terms of they're not being, fastidious about initialisms versus acronyms. We'll leave that for social media, but it's more so, how do you do it all caps or do you use periods for abbreviation? Correct, Mark?
And sometimes I think they just throw things in there for fun.
Good.
All
Good.
right.
We deserve frivolity.
Yes.
We do deserve frivolity. And to end on a sweet spot, our last question is where did Sunday as an ice cream sundae originate? We have the town of Sunday, Maryland, where it was invented. 20% said yes. It was served on a Sunday. 53% of people think that is correct. Its inventor, Meredith Sunday, 13% voted for that one. And its use of Sundays, a brand of chopped nuts, got 20% of the vote. All right, John, the town, the day, the inventor, the nuts.
Oh, I think I did the nuts. I think I'm wrong.
You are indeed wrong.
Oh,
It's the obvious. It's the
is
obvious.
it Sunday the day of the week?
It was something to do with soda shops didn't serve soda on Sunday, but they'd serve as a special thing, this ice cream concoction with toppings on a Sunday. Used to be you could only get it on a Sunday, and then they decided, hey, let's do it every day. And at some point it evolved into, at some point you got the name Sunday.
So you're gonna bring me on your show and make me look good, only for me to get the last question wrong?
I'm sorry. But we have to know that there's so many words.
There are so many words. They just don't stop. But fun story about Sunday. When I saw this, I went, are you in my head? And if so, good luck. But I was recently out to dinner in Columbus that same day, actually. Went out to dinner with my family, and I was playing Hangman with my niece. She's 7. I don't know if they still call it Hangman. They didn't do the gallows. She didn't do the gallows, but
Oh.
I thought I was pulling a word that was going to be just hard for her to get because she was just acing mine. I did Sunday, and she got it with 2 guesses. Meanwhile, this delightful
Wait,
7-year-old.
Sunday AE, you mean?
Sunday, yeah, because she's
Yeah,
on the
that's tricky.
menu.
Yeah.
She said she wanted one, and her dad said, "Well, eat with your eyes. Don't eat with your eyes." Same applies for etymology. But she, meanwhile, she was just like this little perfect creature of English. She was looking around and she was just putting together compound words like life vest and lamplight. I wasn't going to think of lamplight in a million years, but
Yeah.
it just kind of goes to show not just her observation, but just how much of a compounding language English is. But that's a can of words for a different time.
Okay. Yeah, and we're so we've gone through this. I promised that we talk about dictionaries and AI. I also promised that we'd answer a question. There was a viewer from Germany. We always give the time of the show in Universal Time, UTC, which is the same as Reykjavik, Iceland, because they never change. Whereas in Britain, GMT goes to British summertime. Anyway, he showed up an hour early, thought the show was, forgot to take into account daylight saving time, and then he had to go to bed. He's got teaching school in the morning. But anyway, because of that, I certainly don't want to miss his question. He does have a good question for you. Hedwin Newton. I think Heather probably has the question for us.
Yes, it says, as a fellow slang watcher, I sometimes find it tricky to find the right way to react to young people who feel they know more about slang than I do because they are young and I am not. They will tell me things like, nobody ever uses that word because no one in their circle ever uses it, or alert me to this brand new slang word that I recently heard, and then it will be something like, and this has really happened, to fib. Do you also get these kind of responses, and how do you react?
Oh, sure. My answer to this is less a linguistic one and more so a developmental one. I used to be a school teacher with high school age kids, and I would just lean into it and make a point and use my era slang like sick or dope instead of fire, and make them laugh. Because when kids are using slang, it's so much about their identity, right? It's a way for them to express solidarity. It's a way for them to signal to each other that they have a sense of belonging. And it's also a really important way for them to say, and I am not an authority figure, I am not an adult. And it drives them nuts. And let it drive them nuts because kids need to be kids. It's developmentally appropriate and it can be funny. I don't know why it drives them nuts. It always will. With slang, it feels like the world's changing so fast, and social media makes it feel like it's happening faster, and probably some ways it is. But it has a lovely, enduring quality where teens are going to get really mad when parents start trying to talk like them. Now, the flip side of that is if you're a parent in here, just take a beat before you read another article that says, do you know the secret code of your teenager's slang? There is no secret code. There is no elaborate codex of sex slang and things like that. It does not exist. Yeah, there is some of that happening because they're teenagers, but there's no grid of emoji. That's not happening. But for some reason, we adults get pulled into that. So in so many ways, slang is really kind of simple. And if you want to keep an ear out for slang, look for the simple words. Look for the simple words. Yes, expressions like main character energy, right? You are the character of your own story. And you might talk about that on social media. That's not as much slang as simple things like cringe or eat, meaning good, or cook, meaning good. Take something like vibes. Brian Wilson died recently. He wanted the name, I think, Good Vibrations, Good Vibes. That's what is that, 1962, 1963 in there or so? And now, you go online and you got, young engineers talking about vibe coding. Or you got young people talking about vibe check. And they think they're so new and hot. Vibes is almost, what is that, 80 years old now. I'm sorry, 60 years old now. Take a word like cool, informal now. That's got evidence possibly as early as the late 1800s, late 1700s, early 1800s. Same for bad, right? Surviving largely kind of in badass now, because we don't really say he's bad as much as we used to anymore. That's centuries old too. So there's this quality to some slang that will really stick around. There's a quality for most slang to be a flash in the pan, and let the kids be kids. I was doing research on, Phantom Task, Skibbity, Ohio, Sigma Riz, and I read so many articles that was saying, what are all these words? What's going on with the kids? What's their secret code? Are they getting dumber? In some ways, I'm going to say no, because the joke's on us. That's just kids messing around with adults. And there is this quality, especially for younger kids. I do think that you see some uptake for slang in middle schoolers more because of spending a lot of time on Roblox and gaming platforms. They just kind of like to say stuff over and over again. Right? Just repeat it. So Skibbity Ohio Riz, you hear it everywhere. It's because they're repeating it because they think it's funny. So sometimes these mechanisms are far simpler than you think. And adults can be intimidated by adolescents. That's just part of the natural order. So it's an excellent question. And to our friend in Germany, you're very kind to show up, not just in general 6 hours ahead, but an hour earlier than that. So if you sound cringe, you're supposed to sound cringe. That's the short of it, the long and the short of it.
All right. We're going to have to do another show on the making of dictionaries in the age of AI, which was one of the things we said we were going to talk about. I might even ask you to give us a 10-second thought on that. We will have to save it for another show, but this was a lot of fun talking about etymology, and appreciate you staying up, since you've been up since 3, and it's probably warm where you are, just like it is here. So thanks a lot. Good to see you again after just a few weeks, and I'll see you again sometime soon. Thanks, everybody.
Good. Thank you so much for being here, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark and Heather.